Welcome to Walking on the Weene Side. And today I am going to be the host because, as you can see, Kenneth Weene is with us. But we're going to turn the tables on him today. Hi, Ken. Nice to see you.
Hi, Monica. Hi, folks. How are we going to turn the tables on me, Monica?
Well, you know, Ken, people give me feedback about the show as they do you. They say many positive things about it. But there's some things that I hear. And after a while, I'm thinking, you know, people need to know about us a little bit. Why we do the things we do. Maybe our background a little bit and what we're all about. Because I have to say this right off the bat, folks. I have known many, many people in my life. And there are not many that I treasure more than knowing Mr. Kenneth Weene. And I hope that you'll see why when we get done with the show today. Did I make you blush?
Nah, but a little bit, you know, like, oh, gee, that's such a sweet thing to say. Of course, Monica, you know I love you as well. So it's a mutual admiration society.
Oh, you're so nice. I got sunburned. My face is, I'm not blushing. I'm just red. Ken, I wanted to start off a little bit, though, for folks who really haven't seen any of the shows before where you've talked about where you were brought up and such. Could you give us just a little bit of background on where you came from originally?
Well,
besides mom and dad.
You want. For example, my mother, if she was to be believed, I was the result of a hemorrhoid. My father, if he was to be believed, was a goddamn fucking accident. But reality is, I was born, like most people, to parents. Wow, that's pretty. Although I have to admit that growing up, I kept wishing that they weren't my parents. For a long time as a kid, I believed with all my heart that I was the child of an alien. No, I don't mean, from south of the border or something.
Oh, right, but from
up there.
Yeah,
I kept waiting for the spaceship to come back. And I have to tell you, years later as an adult, watching E.T. call home, and I kept saying, hey, don't forget me, so.
They made that movie just for you, right? There is hope.
But I grew up in New England. And of course, you know that because I refer to myself as a broody New Englander, and that, of course, is the title of one of my books, Broody New Englander.
Yeah, well, I hope we can talk about that a little bit, too. I love that book.
But I grew up starting right outside of Boston, and I have to say something about this town, and the town is Somerville, Massachusetts. It's just, it's caught between Cambridge, which is where Harvard is, and Medford, which is where Tufts University is. But Boston itself lacked that kind of intellectual basis. It was actually an industrial city.
Oh, okay.
It were about 103,000 people there when I lived there. 50,000 approximately were Catholic, Irish Catholic. And of course, some of that Irish effect is very much affected my growing up. And in one of my other books, for example, Widow's Walk, is very much influenced by that. Another 50,000 were Italian Catholics. About 3,000 were Protestants. And the remaining 100 or so were of Jewish background, such as myself.
Yes.
And the Protestants and the Jews, we were very thankful that the Irish and the Italians hated each other even more than they hated us. And they were so busy literally having gang fights in the parks and in the streets that the 3,000 or so of us could kind of scurry around them most of the time.
Wow.
And yeah, that was kind of my introduction to how the world shouldn't work, if you will.
Did you ever face religious persecution of any sort because you were such a minority, like in school or anything? Or
Oh yeah, there would be things said, and of course, in those days, you at the beginning of school, you read the Bible, and
yes,
most of the time that was New Testament,
yes,
and you always, of course, said the Lord's Prayer,
mm-hmm.
as in the New Testament, and you sing Christmas carols. And everything was from a Christian perspective, but only once in my life, before we go on to the other side of my life, only once in that town did I ever actually face direct prejudice. Now, I know my father did.
As an adult, right?
As an adult. Well, he was a teacher, and actually he was very much of a outspoken, concerned with union kind of issues. Healthcare
yes.
was a big issue. And one of the ways the administration tried to stop him was to label him a commie Jew.
Well, they were doing that then, though.
Oh, yeah.
You could innocently be invited to a group of some sort of organization, and you're thinking it's something else, or maybe it was something else.
Oh, no. He spoke up at a dinner. They had some kind of a thing, and he was talking about health insurance. He asked a question, and the school superintendent of schools or somebody proceeds to, no, my father was a fairly conservative businessman. Besides teaching, he was a fairly conservative businessman, stock market, the whole thing.
Yes.
But once in middle school, junior high school, the principal, it was the only time I ever did anything wrong. I was late. And I was late because I caught the wrong bus. I hadn't looked. I just figured it was my bus. I was tired that morning.
Just got on.
Bus. Ended up getting off in the wrong town, Midford. Had to walk like 3 miles to get to school that morning. I did. And, I could have gone home and said to my mother, gee, I'm going to be so late, Anyway, I walk into this SOB's office, and he laces into me as a kike.
Oh, my word.
That was not acceptable to me.
No.
And I said something that day that was one of the few times in my life that I guess something snapped in me. And I told him that if I ever heard him use that word again, I would kill him. Now, we were only in his office. There was no.
How old were you, approximately?
Oh, I must have been 14, 15.
Okay.
I was a kid. 14. Anyway, I said, I will kill you. Don't ever say that word again.
Was he shocked?
And I walked out of the office. I don't know what he felt, but, after that, he avoided me.
I wonder why.
Because, at that moment, I was ready to carry it out. That was
you
just...
were that angry, yo.
I don't know why, but it just
Well,
was.
you know what, Ken? Look what you did. You made a mistake, you missed a bus, right? You walked 3 miles to get to school as fast as you possibly can, and then you get called into there and immediately called an abusive name, vulgar name, without even being able to explain what you had just been through.
Oh, no, I had explained. He knew.
Oh, he knew? And still called you this?
Yeah. He was just
that makes it worse.
Just a piece of feces. Anyway, the other part of my life, because my life was, well, and we can come back to my home.
Yeah.
But the other part of my life was in Maine. And every summer after, well, it really started before, but when, right after the war, the Second World War, my father had bought a summer camp. It was had been a camp for girls. and he had been out of commission for a number of years. He bought it, and he opened a camp. The first summer was 1946. The camp was actually named for the family, my brother and myself. It's called Weekila. My brother's name is Larry. He's never been forgiving of me that my name came first because he's the older brother.
Well, yours sounded better.
But anyway, so I would go up to Maine and spend a little over 3 months off, some years, up in Maine every year. And so to me, Maine was in many ways more of a home. Now, we weren't particularly liked in Maine either. People don't know this. You know, people think of the Ku Klux Klan. As you know, I'm very political. People think of the Ku Klux Klan as something that, is the South. It really wasn't.
Oh, no, it was everywhere. Yeah.
The first Klan was during Reconstruction. But then the Klan kind of died out. But then it was revitalized, and it was really more in the North. And Maine was was a big Klan state.
I did not realize that.
It was very liberal. It was a very big Klan state. Indiana, which we think of as the backbone of one of the backbone states of the Republican movement during the Civil War, the anti-slavery, was one of the major Klan states. It's quite a history. Well, anyway, up there, it was being Jewish was really something, again, unusual and unacceptable. And my father, I have a lot of negatives about my parents. You've already picked that up, I'm sure. But father was a very honorable man. His word was his bond. And over time, and again, if you go to my website, www.kennethweene.com, you can look at the essays there. And, one of them, I talk a little about it, but he was considered what they would call a white Jew. Wonderfully racist thing. But people up there respected him because he was honorable. This was a man who, I could walk into a store up there when I got older, and just say, oh, okay. And there was never a question. Nobody ever said, oh, what? No, put your money. Because everybody knew we were honest people.
Yes.
And in that way, we got past that prejudice. But you saw it a lot up there. And of course, it wasn't just if you were Jewish, it was also if you were a Democrat, by the way. And that still holds up there. I remember going into, I think it was Maynard's store. I think it was Maynard who said it to me. Isn't that a wonderful word, Maynard House? And by the way, some of these names, if you read Broody, the names, because I use the names from these people. Well, Maynard said to me one time, and I was a young kid, he says, "You're not a Democrat, are you?" And I said, I said, okay, what do I know? He says, because we got hunting season on them all year round.
Oh, my goodness. So this is nothing new. What's happening in today's world, right?
So anyway, but I learned some things up there. Like I learned about town meetings and how people took care of one another, how people all turned out if there was an emergency.
Yes.
But, one of the things, I every now and then, of course, I live out here in Arizona now, and we have these terrible fires, these forest fires. And one of the things people may pick up is I will very often comment, why are these fire personnel, these men and women, risking their lives to save buildings? And I don't believe in doing that. Well, that goes back to that experience in Maine. And I remember one time, one of the buildings on our property burned down, and the local fire department all showed up. And again, gets echoed in broody New England. But the whole fire department shows up, and my father is running around, and he's got an Indian pump. He's got an Indian pump. If you don't know what that is, folks, it's the thing you put on your back, and you go like
You
this,
just pump it,
water.
yeah.
And he's trying to fight this huge fire.
With this Indian pump.
Meanwhile, all the local guys, they're shooting their hoses up on the surrounding trees and by one nearby building that existed. And one of these guys goes up and he says to my father, "Well, shit, Joseph, you might as well piss on it."
You know what, Ken? With that, I think we're going to take a quick break. And then we'll be back to talk some more with you. I just can't wait. Here you go, folks. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to It Matters Radio. This is Monica Brinkman, and we're taking a walk on the Weene Side today with none other than Mr. Kenneth Weene. You know, Ken, we talked a little bit about where you grew up and some very interesting characters in your life.
Yeah.
I thought we might discuss a little bit about how you got into the profession that you did, besides author, because that's you've been an author your whole life. Your heart has been, but how you went into the mental health field.
Yes, I did.
Now, was there a main reason for that? Were you attracted to it, or?
Sure. Well, you know, I grew up, I mean, I've kind of intimated it, and one of my books is called Memoirs from the Asylum. Now, it's fiction, okay? I want to make sure everybody knows. I write fiction, except for the essays. But memoirs, a lot of it is based on the realities of my life. In fact, the impetus behind it was, and it was started many, many years ago and then left on the shelf for a long time, the idea, but it was actually written in response to the suicide, very strange suicide, of my favorite cousin, who was also my closest friend. So a lot of my upbringing is in that book and a lot of the things. But I came from a very dysfunctional family. My brother and I, especially I, and I'll get back to that if you want me to, suffered from something called von Munchausen's by proxy.
So your brother also?
Well, yeah, but he to a lesser extent. It really, my mother focused on...
Well, you were the youngest.
Well, partly, yeah. Well, that's part of the reason. Actually, it gets a little crazier than that. And I'm going to tell you a story.
All right.
Nobody other than my wife has ever heard. Okay. About how, when it reached its ultimate. I think without
could you tell people what that
I'm going to say the sum of...
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but could you let people know what that means?
Von Munchausen by proxy, yes. Okay, it is when a caretaker, a parent usually, deliberately does things to cause a child to become sick, physically sick, or to appear to be physically sick, in order for the caretaker to get sympathy or connection to other people. And it had always been there, and contributing to it was that I had allergies. So because of these allergies, of course, I'd sniffle and cough a lot. And no matter how many times the doctor would tell my mother, oh, he doesn't need to be here, no, just let him go to school, she would decide I was sick. Yeah, but, you know, one of the giveaways here is that she used to, for example, in springtime when I would be most allergic, she would bring lilacs into the bedroom that she had put me in. Now, I'm very allergic to lilacs. So basically, she was bringing the allergen to me, but you see, her goal was I should be sick. Well, it always had been there, but then it really got much worse after the summer before I was in third grade. And that's when things really get a little screwy. Although that's not in any of the books, but it's there. What happened was, first, they needed a bed in the cabin that I was sleeping in, because I was, the kid, and they needed a bed. So my mother came up with a plan, which I only realized many years later. Her plan was I would be sick, because she was so into having me be sick that it was no problem for her.
Yeah.
And that, by the way, interestingly enough, other than these times, I was never sick at camp. And when I went away to boarding school, I think I spent like 2 nights in the infirmary in 3 years in boarding school. So,
wow.
Sick.
Right.
Sick.
You weren't a sickly child, no.
No. So
just
anyway,
allergies.
She decides that I have German measles. And she announces to the camp, to all the kids and the counselors, that there's a German measles epidemic, and she's going to inspect all the kids to see who's got German measles.
Oh, jeez.
She proceeds, of course, I've got that. Now, remember, I've been there longer than anybody else. I've been stuck in camp. I mean, these other kids were all out, like a week or 2 weeks. I was there. They were still in town.
Yeah, right.
But I'm the only one. And not only that, but I've developed German measles without spreading it anymore. Now suddenly I have to, it's crazy stuff. Okay, so comes the visiting day in the middle of the summer, and they no longer need me to be in bed because somebody went home now. So back in the cabin. Well, go on toward the end of the season, and I was very into horseback riding. It was one of my few really favorite things to do.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And there was supposed to be a very special horseback riding overnight trip, which was like, oh my God, I would kill to go on this. And the horseback riding instructor said he wanted me. He picked one person from each age group, and I was the top rider.
Oh, when he picked
I never was top in anything physical in my life. And anybody who reads like some of my essays again on my website, like klutz. Anyway, there was a kid at camp whose father was very prominent in the community and who sent a lot of business. And this kid evidently wanted to go on this trip. So my mother decided I had a relapse of German measles.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm. So, that's on the her side, you see, the message there is, and I want to emphasize because, when we're talking about childhood, we have to talk about the meta message that the kid is receiving. The meta message was, other people are more important than you. You must take care of them. Now, fast forward, and I'm 14, just turning 15, and I'm now at boarding school. We'll come back to why I'm at boarding school in a minute.
Okay.
But my father had taken a year off, and they were staying in Florida. And my brother and I flew down from Boston for Christmas vacation. Now, we flew Eastern Airlines, and anybody who knows anything about airline history knows, don't fly Eastern. Well, Eastern lost the plane, basically. And we got in hours and hours late, and nobody had explained to anybody. So my mother, who, as you might have gathered, was rather emotional and histrionic, is like fit to be tied. Well, we get there. My brother and I had been up all night because we were supposed to get this plane at like 10 o'clock at night, and we didn't leave Boston until like 4 in the morning or something. And I'm like dead on my feet. We get to Florida, grab some breakfast, go to the motel, and my brother and I are lying in our room, like trying to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And my father comes and he says to me, Kenneth, go talk to your mother. Look at all the problems you've caused. Now go straight up. Yeah, exactly. This was the next part of the message is I'm responsible for this crazy woman's mental health. Okay. So you asked how I got into mental, that's how I got in. In boarding school, the other kids used to come to me and come in my room at night and talk to me, some of the kids. What I didn't know, and this is part of the horror of the mental health profession, that I learned subsequently from at least one of those people, was that they were being sexually abused by one or more of the teachers. One advantage of being heavy is that you're not very often sexually abused.
Right.
For men aren't anyway. I guess for women it's probably a little different. But so none of them, these crazy son of a bitch teachers wanted to molest me, but some of these guys were being, and they were looking for, but of course they wouldn't tell me that, and I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't have the training then to even think about it. But you see, that sense of being there for people and hearing their problems and things and being sensitive. Do
you think, Ken, that part of that might be because you were wishing that there was someone there for you?
Oh, yes.
When you were going through this?
We're talking father figures. Okay. My father and I were reasonably close and when I was young. The closeness was he liked to walk and talk about politics. He was a political science, history, problems in democracy teacher. And I loved to walk and I loved to talk. So he loved to take me on walks and he'd talk about politics and government. We never talked about, I knew nothing about him personally to speak of. He certainly never talked to me about sex or,
You never got to talk.
But we don't. So that, by the way, is why I am very interested in politics. And I am going to ask Monica, by the way, to play a political piece after this segment because it is something I am concerned about.
Yes.
And people who follow me on Facebook, which I hope some of you folks will do, will find on Twitter, wherever, LinkedIn, whatever I'm on, you'll find that I write a lot about politics, and I from a very morally driven point of view, not necessarily to the far left as people think. As a matter of fact, going back to Maine for a second, I started out. Margaret Chase Smith was my, full-time favorite. Ed Brooke in Massachusetts. I was Eisenhower. If you go to my website or on my YouTube, you'll find a thing about when I met Eisenhower.
Oh, Ken, but the Republicans back then weren't the same party as we have today.
No, the party left me.
And I think a lot of people loved him.
I met Barry Goldwater, and I loved Barry Goldwater. I thought he was a wonderful person, and I thought he would make a much better president than Johnson. So, folks, if you think
I do too.
A screaming Democratic liberal, no. Anyway, getting back to.
No, but I think that's a good thing to know, Ken, because a lot of people, because of the view you have at the moment in time right now, they just label you.
Yeah.
And you're one of the most open-minded people I know who looks at both sides.
I try.
I had to say that.
Okay, thank you. Well, anyway, getting back to my father before we run out of time. When I turned about 13, he stopped wanting to have, well, not that he wanted to have anything beyond talking politics with me. I mean, he wouldn't play catch with me. He'd play with my brother. And my brother's a good athlete, I bet. So he didn't want to. But when I turned about 13, he stopped talking to me, and he stopped having anything to do with me. And there was a very interesting, sad story about that, and it has to do with tropical fish and stuff, and for another time. Okay. We don't have time today. But anyway, they came to a head. There was a point where he just became really abusive to the point where I nearly killed him in retaliation. Years later, in my own psychoanalysis, my psychoanalyst couldn't believe the story. And I said, do you want me to, I knew who I could call. I said, do you want me to call my father's friend who was there? There were a lot of people there, but I knew Max was there. And ask him about it. And, verify my memory. And Aaron, my analyst, said yes. So I called Max up. And I said, Max, there's something that happened when I was a teenager, and I want to make sure that my memory is correct. He says, oh, you're talking about the time you nearly killed him with the fire axe?
Yeah. You didn't even have to remind him.
And Max had been the one who had stopped me. He had, he just yelled at me and, oh, wait a minute, I can't do this. But at that moment,
it almost sounds like, Ken, that your father wanted you to take care of Mom.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was supposed to.
So he didn't want to spend that much time with you because he wanted your attention with her. And
No. That's not why. He didn't want to pay attention. My father had his own issues. He was very angry man. See, people, I got to tell you one more story, and then we probably should take a break. But you see, I would say these things about my parents. The only one who really appreciated my parents for what they were was my wife. Her parents thought my parents were wonderful. A lot of people thought my parents, because my parents could play the part beautifully.
Oh, sure. Outward appearance.
They were in this business of taking care of other people's kids.
Yeah.
So my mother-in-law kept saying to me, Kenneth, you don't know, there's something wrong with you. Why would you say these things about your parents? And then one year, after we'd been married for a few years, my parents accepted Sid and Isabel's invitation to visit them outside of Washington, D.C., where they lived. And they spent one day, in my parents' company. That night, Isabel called me to apologize.
Yeah. Because you can only keep up that appearance for so many hours, so long before people see. Yeah, and that's a really difficult thing too, because I actually had a dad that was a little bit like that, because everybody would say how wonderful he was, and it wasn't. So things aren't always what they look like from the outside. It's nice to take a second look once in a while. But we're going to take a break right now, and we're going to come back and share some more of Ken's life and talk about the show a little bit. For right now, though, here's something that Ken really wanted everyone to see. Enjoy.
I've always believed that the most important role in our democracy belongs to all of us, the role of citizen. So it's been inspiring to see growing numbers of people jumping in and embracing that role, from organizing, to registering new voters, to running for office for the first time. That's all vital to protecting this democracy of ours. So is something else, and that's rethinking the way we draw our congressional districts. Today, technology lets the party in power precision draw the map in a way that packs the other party's supporters into as few congressional districts as possible. It's why your district might be shaped like a corkscrew. But it's also how a party gains more seats while winning fewer votes, which isn't fair. It means that politicians don't have to worry as much about a serious challenge from the other side. That moves our debate from the rational, reasonable middle, where most Americans are, to the extremes. And that makes common sense policies that most Americans support less likely. In America, politicians shouldn't pick their voters. Voters are supposed to pick their politicians. That's why I supported former Attorney General Eric Holder in starting the National Democratic Redistricting Committee. It's the first ever comprehensive strategy to make redistricting fairer. It's fighting for reforms to make the map less partisan, like the ones that just passed in Ohio, and to elect candidates who support fair redistricting. And it will bring legal challenges wherever congressional lines have been drawn to diminish your voice and your vote. Of all the politicians who will redraw our maps in a few years, half will be elected this year. And if we don't elect leaders who support fair elections, then we could see a repeat of what happened 10 years ago. Republican-controlled legislatures all across the country locked in structural advantages that would eventually determine every future election. Of course, that's good for special interests who want to protect tax breaks for the most powerful, or the gun lobby, or environmental polluters, but it's not good for our children. And regardless of our party affiliations, it's not good for our democracy. So join us today. Help our democracy work better by electing representatives who actually represent all of us once again. Make your vote count and your voice is heard.
Welcome back to Walking on the Weene Side, and this is Monica Brinkman, and our guest today is Mr. Kenneth Weene. Ken, gosh, it's been so wonderful and interesting talking with you. I could go on for hours, but I know we want to touch base a little bit about the show and your part in it.
Sure.
And I think number one, I wanted to ask, what type of guests do you look for on the show?
Well, first thing, of course, I want people who have something that is going to interest other people. There has to be something that I think is inherently interesting, and I don't have to agree with it. Mm-hmm. Okay, I've had people on that I don't agree with. I really am very welcoming to people to come on and talk about their books, their ideas, their music sometimes, all kinds and sorts of things. But they have to be interesting. Now, there's two parts to that. The topic has to be, in my opinion, interesting. Well, three parts. The second is that they have to be able to present themselves with some oomph. One of the things that drives me crazy is people who just don't come across,
Yeah.
It just makes bad listening. Otherwise, I mean, it's not that I don't like their book. It's, and sometimes I'll even say, gee, I want to have this person on. I'll listen, I'll contact them. And after 5 minutes of talking to them, oh my God, I'd fall asleep. I couldn't interview them.
Yeah, because some people are just monotone, like that teacher that you had to slap yourself to listen to her. It's true, and you're not doing them a service if you're going to have them on just boring everybody.
And then the third thing is competency. Okay, I like, especially when it comes to books. I read every book that I shouldn't say every book that I discuss, but the principal book. Like, they may have written another book, and I certainly invite somebody to talk about all their books, even though I haven't read them all.
That's right.
But there's got to be a sense of competency in the writing. Now, I'm not saying, hey, I'm only interviewing James Joyce here, or something like that. I'm saying, by competency, I mean the book has got to be something that if you said to me, Ken, is this book a book you think I'd enjoy reading? Sadly, I can't say that about every book, can I?
No.
So, one of the things is that there are people whose books, I like their topic, I like their ideas, I like them, but the book is just badly written. And
yes.
I could not, and I don't want to put somebody on and then say, hey, wow, folks, aren't they a lovely person? Don't buy their book. I'd hate myself for that.
I know it. I know.
It's interesting topic, competency, and interviewable personality are the three things. And I have one interview right now that I know is coming up, and then I'm not going to mention which one it is or what the topic, but I think that the person is talking balderdash, but she talks about it with a competency. She knows what it is. She's sharing her views, and I am totally respectful of that. Okay.
Well, Ken, I think if people would look at any of the shows that you have done, they'll see that there are so many different types of people, different races, different religions, different political views. And the thing that people aren't understanding is you are open to listen to these people and have a discussion with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I not only am open, I want to have. I keep trying to find, for example, people who will discuss with me from the opposite point of view some of my big issues. Like, anybody who knows me knows that I talk a lot about the Reconstructionist Christians and of what they're doing to America. Everybody who knows me knows that I am a strong proponent of not an open border, but of reasonable immigration policies and concern for those seeking asylum. Everybody who knows me knows, that I have a lot of things that I believe in.
Yes.
But I'm constantly looking for people who want to come on the show and talk about it. But what I am going to say is, if you want to come on the show, and for example, I'm a supporter of Black Lives Matter, and anybody who goes to my website and reads my ad will see how intensely I feel about the issues of race and equality. But I'm willing to have somebody come on and disagree with me. I just say to them, but first, you have to have read some history. And when somebody comes on and says, well, Black Lives Matter, look, everything stopped at the Civil War. I mean, it's okay, Reconstruction, okay, the Klan, but, nowadays, well, hey, when I was still living in New York, we had a lynching out in an area called Howard Beach. A black man, stopped at a bar and asked directions. How do I get out of here? Right. He wasn't even looking for like somebody's home. He says, geez, I got off the road wrong. Could you guys tell me how
directions
to get out of here? And they killed him. Okay. I mean, that's in my lifetime.
Yeah.
We're talking in my lifetime, black churches being firebombed.
Yes.
Okay. We're talking in my lifetime, not just blacks, but Hispanics and especially Native Americans being killed by police at a much higher rate. And if you lived in New York, when I did, when Louima was raped, physically raped with a plunger, basically.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Don't tell me it stopped in the 1860s.
No, it's true. No, you're right.
Okay, so you have to have read history. So that's a competency.
History's fascinating. In fact, if more people would read it, we might not keep replaying the same stuff over and over again.
But I am very willing to have people who disagree with me.
Right.
But please show you have competency. I love people. I know you follow me on Facebook, and I love people who correct me or disagree with me. One of my best friends on Facebook, and somebody I've known for years, is a very conservative Trump supporter. And for those of you who look at things, her first name is Madison. Actually, she goes by BB, which is how I know her. And I won't give her last name, so you can go looking for her. But unless you're a friend of mine. But she and I disagree on almost every, except the animals. We both are wildly supportive of animals.
Of animals.
Care of animals.
See, but you found a common ground.
Yeah. But we've known each other for years, and I love her dearly. And we spar, and I love the fact she'll correct me. I have another friend who will comment things like, I was expecting this biased thing, and I agree with you. So I love the people who disagree, who are evaluating what I'm saying.
But this is what happens, though, when you actually communicate and not start out with a point of view already.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm trying to let people know. It's not like Ken wants people to come on his show so he can attack them all. I've never seen him attack anybody.
I've never attacked a guest, I don't think, ever.
Never, ever. You've always had the utmost courtesy. And in fact, some of the conversations that came from the guests who, let's say politically, they were conservative. Those were some of the most interesting shows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think of Larry, for example, who's a columnist for the Washington, what was it? Not the Post, the other one. Times.
Yeah, the other one, yeah.
And he's been on the show a couple of times. I love Larry. He's a nice man, and he and I agree on a lot of things. And he's a conservative columnist.
Exactly, but what I liked about and why I encourage people to watch our shows is during your conversation with him, and it was wonderful. They chuckled, they had great conversations. What was wonderful about the whole thing was there were many, many things they agreed on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people will find this out And that's one of the things that I know I'm trying to do with the show also is to get to everybody, not just, a target group.
Well, you do mostly music, and of course you're very eclectic. Now, I've done some of the music shows with you because you felt they were appropriate. And, but, I don't know that I could do a good interview of certain kinds of musicians, not because of some prejudice, but because I really can't necessarily appreciate their music. And as you know, there are some kinds of music that, for example, if it's an opera topic or a classical topic, you tend to give it to me because I'm going to be in seventh heaven to somebody like, say, J. Hunter Morris. But I don't, I'm not particularly like a rap or hip hop or even pop. I tend to be more folk, blues, jazz. Yeah. So, you invite me in, I think, appropriately, but
well, that's why you were there with Wiley Bo and Don.
Yeah. But, when we do happen to be where I'm with somebody whose music is not my style, it's still, I'm respectful of the fact they're making music. Hey, if you can make music in a way that it's worth people listening to, it doesn't have to be my taste. And I'm saying this because I want to emphasize the books. I told them I wasn't going to use their book.
Yes.
And she was very upset with me. Well, you just don't like fantasy.
Yeah, I've got feedback when you.
Yeah. Now I happen to have another book that I've read. I'm waiting for. We're scheduled in a month or so. I know she has asked me to wait till she had a trailer ready to put on the show. Who happens to have written a very fine fantasy novel? Okay. I love fantasy. I'm sorry to that person. It wasn't a well-written fantasy.
Yes.
Okay. And I could not in conscience say to the audience.
Well, Ken, I like that about you, though. Because we're not just getting anybody on the show to fill space anytime. We're quite selective with both our musical guests and our spoken word guests.
Mm-hmm. Well, just one thing I want to point out to people. Okay, I read every book. That means I've read a lot of books by people that I then didn't have on.
That's right.
Okay, that's a lot of work and effort if I didn't care about doing it right. Okay.
No, because most hosts don't read it, or they might just do a couple pages or something, or read the back of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that says a lot, Ken, because when you respect the guests that you're having on.
I respect them enough to read their book.
Yeah, to be able to discuss it with them.
Yeah. The other thing is, people don't realize that, sometimes people think, oh, geez, Ken thinks he knows a lot, or how come Ken knows him.
Yeah, Ken.
I'm going to be very honest about here, folks, is that I do research. Okay? If it's a nonfiction book, or if it's a historical fiction, or something like that, before the guest comes on, I'm doing research. And here's a book right here. It's one I'm just ready to start the research. I've read. This lady is supposed to be coming on. It's called Flying Jenny, a novel. And I thought it was pretty good. It takes place just before the stock market crash in 29. And it's about women in flying. But it's about much more than that. And the thing that really hit me about it was its connection, however strangely, to Fear of Flying.
Oh!
It's a very interesting kind of book to me. But I have a lot of research to do. When I go on, I want to know a lot about these people, these women, early flyers, were involved in this story. Even though it's a work of fiction, I'm going to know a little bit more about.
Of course.
It's a very interesting take on Amelia Earhart. I don't know that much about her. By the time my guest is on, I'm not sure. I think her name is pronounced Tui. Before Ms. Tui joins me, I will have learned a little more about Amelia Earhart. So when I say blah, 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 Amelia Earhart, that's what.
But Ken, what I want people to understand is it's not arrogance at all. It's taking time and effort to present not only the guest, but the audience with a good interview.
And I hope people who will hear this and say, well, wow, maybe I will go on the show. Please do contact us. You can contact us through the It Matters Radio website. You can contact me directly through my website, www.kennethweene.com. Or you can contact me on Facebook. I don't recommend contacting me on Twitter because it just is the amount of characters.
I know.
112. It's too short.
You have to keep writing them.
But one thing, please don't contact me and ask to come on the show if you don't have Skype.
Exactly.
Video, because that's how we do the show. We get it up on a Skype interview and we tape that, and that's how Monica, who does all this incredible tech work involved, puts the show together. So please, 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 okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have that, and that you're prepared to do an interview, because I have a pile. Well, I don't have such a big pile because I give books away and all, but I have a pile of books that I've read that have been sent to me by authors, by publicists, and then to find out, oh gosh, I can't do a Skype interview.
Yeah. So don't even waste your time, guys.
So, it's and the worst thing, you want to know the worst thing about it? A couple of them were wonderful, wonderful books.
What I don't understand
right now
is that word "can't," because Skype is just downloading Skype.
I know, but for some reason
they don't want to go to the effort. So,
well, it may be that, it may be what kind of computer access they have. Whatever the reason is, but I have one sitting up there. I'm looking at it right now. It's called Ears for Murder. It's a delightful mystery story. It involves the woods. It's set not in New England, but in the Northwest. But it's very much the kind of setting I love. It involves basset hounds. Oh my God! Who could resist basset hounds, right?
Rich loves basset hounds.
This book I just so badly want. I get all done, and I contact the publicist. Oh, she doesn't want to do Skype.
She doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, well, oh, come on, why did you send it to me? Please don't do that.
Yeah, I understand, and we put that all over the place. But so, folks, gosh. If any of you have a product or a service or a book or even a point of view that you are versed in presenting, contact Ken.
Please. You don't even have to be versed, as long as you know your stuff and you have some oomph to you. Come on, we'll have fun. I love getting to know people, and it's amazing to me how many of my guests over the years we've been doing this their comment to me has been, I never had an interview like that before. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
And because it really is. I love doing it, and okay. Anyway,
it shows.
I wanted to bring up one more topic before running over time, but Monica, you and I have been friends for a long time, and of course, you had started doing the show with a mutual friend, Alana.
Yes.
And she dropped out. You asked me, and And it's been my great privilege and honor to work with you. But, you know, it isn't just the two of us. It hasn't just been the two of us. There have been some other very memorable co-hosts of the show. And tonight I thought, wouldn't it be nice to remember one of them who was very, very special. And one of the things that made her so special was that she loved to listen to my voice.
Oh, she loved you.
I know. And so I believe we have a little tribute to Punky tonight.
Yes, because, folks, the 17th was the day that Punky passed last year. So we just couldn't let Ken or I have it go by without at least having a little bit of a tribute to her. And Ken, I hope you'll come back again sometime and we can talk more. There's so much more I could cover with you. It's been such fun.
Next time, though, let's talk more about you, because, you know...
Oh, I'm so boring.
And let's, you know, because I think it's fun to share who we are.
Yeah.
And, you know,
yeah.
I promise this, okay, that whenever you and I get together, that I'm going to be as honest and open as I am capable of. And so, folks, one of the things, though, is you see, Monica and I have never actually met in person.
No. Only on Skype.
Only on Skype and the other precursor we used. And so I am hoping that at some point in the next year or so, Monica, you'll come to Tucson, which is where we live now, so we can actually meet and I can be equally honest in person, and also so you can get to know my wonderful wife, Roz, and I can get to know your,
that'd be great. And we could do a show.
We could. Yeah. We could. All we need to do is get a second computer so we can Skype.
You got it. That's Skype again. Well, Ken, thank you so much. I know we're running out of time. And folks, here we go with our tribute to Punky. And come back again. And I will be here on Thursday also with all the jazz and blues that you can stand. Okay, folks, have a good one. Bye, Ken.
Bye, Monica.
Provided, you know, they don't have like 10 cats crawling around their ankles and.
What did he just say? Because here
they have a lot of medication on the counter. Then I was like, you know, okay. No, but generally.
Well, yeah, I mean, some people are you know, touched in the head, and other people have had some real experiences, you know. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Oh, she pulls up a cat. I'm sorry.
That was, no, do you know that when you said that, she just appeared?
Really?
I swear to you. I was going to say, oh, my gosh, and Punky just appeared. And she walked across, and then she came back.
That's hilarious.
everybody. This is Monica Brinkman, and I'm going to be hosting It Matters Radio for you this show. And joining me is my wonderful Punky Radio Diva Cat. I want to tell you all that Punky wants to, first of all, thank all of you who have been sending her well wishes, because if you don't know, she has been sick. And she appreciates all the people who have sent the well wishes and also who have visited her Facebook page.